Many of our YouTube videos are in essence book reviews, since we prefer to quote the classical and modern authors to encourage you to study and reflect these classics for yourself. We also record videos that are book reviews that can be referenced by other videos, so we're not overly repetitious. In this video, we'll review the commentaries on the Torah and the moral teachings of the Talmud for our series on the Ten Commandments, or Decalogue, and discuss quickly the medieval rabbis who wrote the classical commentaries, mainly Rashi, Rambam, and Ramban. And we will review other books commenting on the Jewish moral laws that instruct us how to live a godly life, which is the primary foundation of our Judeo-Christian culture. And indeed, along with the Greco-Roman Stoic and moral philosophers, is also the foundation of the Western philosophical tradition. In Hebrew, Torah means law. The 5 books of the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, are the most treasured part of the scriptures for Jews. And on the Sabbath, Jews read a portion of the Torah so that all 5 books are read during the course of the year's services. The Talmud is a commentary on the Laws of Judaism, and the Babylonian Talmud is more extensive than the Jerusalem Talmud, and you can fill several books of a bookshelf with the Talmud. Since much of the Talmudic commentaries on the dietary laws and the Jewish festival observances, we will consult summaries on the Talmud on the moral and ethical laws of the Torah. We encourage Christians to study the moral lessons of the Torah and the Talmud. We do not hold to the dual covenant belief that the laws in the Torah have been superseded by the new covenant. St. Irenaeus, in his influential work on Heresies, teaches us that the moral laws of the Torah are still binding on Christians, and that the dietary and festival laws that have been superseded can be read as teaching moral lessons allegorically. So now let's discuss the leading medieval rabbinical commentaries on the Torah. The earliest of the medieval commentators is Rashi. He was a medieval French rabbi from the 11th century. Rashi was famous both for his commentary on the Talmud and on the Tanakh, and that's the Jewish scriptures, and particularly the first 5 books of the Old Testament, known to the Jews as the Torah or Chumash. And of course that's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Rambam, with an M, or Maimonides, is a medieval Sephardic Jewish philosopher. He was born in Cordoba, Spain, and lived most of his life in Egypt. And we will be studying his summary of the 613 commandments drawn from the Torah, 240 you shall positive commands, and 365 negative you shall not commandments. His summarization of the Talmud in his 14-volume Mishneh Torah has a semi-canonical status among Jews to the present. Now, the Talmud is a sprawling commentary on Jewish life, examining both the moral teachings of the Torah plus rabbinical discussions on following the dietary law and how to observe the many religious holidays. And you can access much of Rambam's work, in particular the Mishneh Torah and also the Rashi commentary, on the Chabad website. Ramban, with an N, or Nachmanides, was also a Sephardic rabbi and philosopher born in Spain, and he was a generation after Rambam, and he emigrated to Jerusalem after the First Crusade. He was known both for his commentary on the Torah, which we will consult, and for his writings on the Kabbalah, or mystical writings on the Torah. And we have some other books. One treasure that we discovered in the bookstore is the Book of Legend. It was originally published in Hebrew in 1911. It's absolutely marvelous. It has many moral quotations drawn from the Talmud and the Midrash, with a complete index, which makes it all the more valuable. Another very valuable work is the 613 Mitzvot by Dr. Eisenberg. He's a modern-day Rambam. He's a radiologist, non-practicing attorney, and a Jewish scholar and author. We found his explanations of the 613 Mitzvah to be elegant and concise. We also found this other volume in the bookstore, a commentary on the Torah in English and Hebrew. We did learn from this commentary, but in our humble opinion, it's not really that much of an improvement on the classical commentaries, and we demurred on some of his modern perspectives. And we have the Essential Talmud. This summary has been in print for 30 years and starts with the history of the Talmud, plus summaries of its main moral teachings. We always like the Penguin Classic books, and this 800-page volume from Penguin has selections from the Talmud arranged in the order of the actual tractates. And this introduction also discusses how to study the Talmud. And we have Every Man's Talmud, and we think this is just wonderful. It's organized by topics, such as sections on the moral life, domestic life, and social life, plus sections on topics like jurisprudence, and we may do a video on that pretty soon. And we also have the Bedside Torah, as the title suggests. This author prefers to retell both classical moral stories from Jewish sources, plus stories of his own on the Torah. And we have the Torah Revealed, and this is a selection of stories from the Torah itself in the order of the 5 books in which the stories and teachings appear. I've been looking through my bookcase, and I discovered that over the years I had purchased many books from Rabbi Joseph Telushkin. And in particular Hillel. This thin book on Hillel and Shammai was thin because not much was passed down from this interesting rabbi of the opening centuries of the Christian era. And we enjoyed his comparison between Judaism and Christianity. And we have a really enjoyable video comparing the teachings of Jesus, Hillel, and Shammai. Also, one of Rabbi Telushkin's books on Jewish wisdom, he uses many sources for this, including the scriptures, the sages, the Talmud, and many modern sources, both Jewish and Christian. And an excellent book on biblical literacy. Our rabbi reviews the books of the Old Testament, but unfortunately not the deuterocanonical books, and briefly discusses the 613 mitzvah. And we saw this little treasure when we were doing the research for this video on the 10 Commandments of Character. And you could see some of the titles like Know Your Weaknesses, When Ethics and Other Values Conflict, Choose Ethics, and Be Fair, Be Courageous, Be Honest, Be Grateful, Practice Self-Control, Exercise Common Sense, and Admit when you've done wrong. This is a very interesting topic. I mean, you might look at the Old Testament, and the question of character is interesting. We can see this comparing the kingships of Saul and David. Now, David may have sinned even more than Saul, but David had greater character, or so you could argue. Now, these additional so-called commandments do not neatly map to the Decalogue as we see. We look forward to pondering these issues of character when reading this book. Now, the Jewish section of the bookstore is dominated by Jewish culture and cuisine and the Holocaust, with very few books on how to live a godly life. But many of these books are written by Rabbi Joseph Telushkin. It seems like morals and ethics are really all he wants to write about. And these are his latest books, and the table of contents and sample pages on Amazon are interesting. But the second volume is not organized by the individual commandments in the Decalogue as I anticipated. And that's the books on a code of Jewish ethic, one on the commandments basically on loving God, and volume 2 is love your neighbor as yourself. So thank you, and we hope to see you in our other YouTube videos.